And we are recording.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Performance Check. This is our third or fourth episode, so you're still getting in on the ground floor. If this was the first season of Schitt's Creek, you would still be wondering what's going on. We're trying. What we're going to be talking about tonight is how we're talking about our Valentine's session, our one-off, and we're going to be talking about what happened, how the DM felt, how the players felt. We're going to let you see a little bit of the behind-the-scenes action and get more of that so you feel like you're more involved. So, why don't we just get started? Why don't we just open with... Jason, why don't we open with you? Since this was your baby, your Valentine baby, your train... How did the night go? Actually, no. Let's back up. What was the inspiration for the adventure? What made you think of using the train in the Eberron lands, which is called the Lightning Rail, by the way?
Yes. Yeah. I think I was just like with the one shots. I always try to do a couple of things. Usually they're connected to like I don't think it's been intentional, but they happen to have been next to major holidays every time. So I try to buy into that a little thematically. But then ever since Eberron came into the picture for season 2, I always wanted to do something with the lightning rail because I knew that it existed in Eberron, and it's just such a neat image, and it's a very magical yet unique image for something like D&D. So it felt like it just felt like that would be a fun thing. And the other thing is that what I also really wanted to do, like what a train situation does is it creates like other than a dungeon that you're delving into, it's a very different kind of an environment for the players to move through. So and so it was kind of me stretching myself, because often I've done work where it's more specifically going to a particular place to get a certain thing that's often just combat heavy or puzzle heavy, and this was a more social adventure, and that was neat for me to try.
Right, with all the different characters that the players had to interact with and things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Just to give people a little more background, our game this year is set between two worlds. It's set in Faerun, Forgotten Realms, and Eberron, and it alternates back and forth switches over 2 or 3 month period, or 2 or 3 games at a time. The one shot gives a chance for this one was an extra treat for you guys because almost nobody here is normally a player. There was only one regular player, so it was a whole bunch of guest stars. And it's also a chance to try sort of alternative stories or additional stories for some of the existing characters, or at least connected to some of the existing characters. So it's to add a little bit of depth. So let's talk first to Jen, who played Waverly. Yes, Waverly, Jen is one of our regular DMs. She runs Forgotten Realms. She runs the Forgotten Realms side. Yeah. And so, Jen, tell me what's the difference for you?
Kevin, you just suddenly went mute. You said, Jen, what's the difference? And then I couldn't hear what you said after that.
Oh, it's because I was moving around. I was asking what the difference is between being a DM and versus being a player for you.
About 20 hours, maybe more. So yeah, perhaps the other DMs in the audience will recognize that. Like it's so much fun not to have to prepare so much. And I mean, as a player, I probably prepare more than is healthy, just because I have a DM background. But so I had like strategy notes, and as well as had thought quite a bit about her backstory, of course none of which appeared at all, but yeah, so that is mostly it, is the level of stress that comes in and amount of preparation between being a DM and being a player. It is really fun to just sort of think about what this character is going to do rather than the world, and pay attention to what other characters are doing, and your 3 NPCs. So not that I don't enjoy DMing, because I have a bit of a control thing, but it's just so much more relaxing to play. I can see why you like it, players.
Excellent. Now, Davis was our guest for Monday night. Davis is also normally a DM, so let me ask you basically the same thing. Oh, actually, sorry. Let me back up. Jen, do you want to just quickly talk about your character? Just give like a 2-line summary of who Waverly was, and I'll ask the same thing for Mistos.
Sure. So Waverly, which may or may not have come across, was completely based on Katharine Hepburn. If Katharine Hepburn were a detective, that's who Waverly would be. And speaking of the many
spellcasting, god-worshipping detective.
Yes, although actually one of the cool things about Eberron is that clerics often are truly just faith-based and not like deity-based. So she had faith in knowledge, and Katharine Hepburn, in fact, was an atheist and proud of it. And so, in fact, if you had scratched beneath the surface of Waverly, she also was, but just truly believed in seeking out knowledge. And that was the source of her divine power. So that was her inspiration, and that's who I tried to play her as.
Now, explain again about how you over-prepare for a character.
Okay, so I read several biographies of Katharine Hepburn. I mean, just online. and then we have a little bit of text RP before the session, which is a lot of fun. And I put in a little bit of hints, Katharine Hepburn smoked, and she went to Bryn Mawr, the college. And so one of the ways that I proposed that Waverly had actually met Emma's character, Judica, beforehand is because they were aging at completely different rates. Waverly is orc human, and Judica is orc elf. So when Waverly was a freshman in college, she was smoking these cheroots that could only be used with herbs that came from a particular druidic enclave, which happened to be where Judica was because remember, she spent this time with the druids and all this kind of stuff. So in fact, Judica was her dealer. And her college, Waverly's college, was called Bryn. Oh man, what's the name of the dragon in Eberron? The dragon of the sky? Sybaris? So yes. Her college was called Bryn Sybaris for Bryn Mawr. So that is the way in which I over-prepare.
That went beyond teasing and funny to, we need to get you a phone number. Just as a quick interjection, I prepared for Hammond. I was watching Professor Elemental's Fighting Trousers, and that gave me the inspiration for Hammond. There we go. Miss Davis.
I think we know what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know what that is? All right, I'll pull that up. Well, Davis, you talk about Mistos. Actually, no. Let's back up. Let's tell us a little bit about yourself and what.
This is how you create tension, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so repeat the question to Davis, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was asking was, Davis, tell us a little bit about yourself. What you normally do when you're playing D&D. Obviously, you talked about DMing, and also just a little bit about Mistos.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I normally run a homebrew campaign which in a country called Wallachia, because I went with a temporary name, and then we started playing, and I just haven't gone back to change it yet. So naming is not my strong suit. But that is actually where I drew Mistos from a little bit. We've been playing in the same tier, that kind of 5 to 10 level tier, for about a year now. So we had just completed like a tournament arc in one of the main cities, and it just off the cuff one day in a session, the arena champion became Mistos, who was not originally a halfling barbarian, sorry. And then just as I started to think about getting ready for this campaign, it's been a long time since I played, and you end up with this stack of characters that you want to pull off the pile and start playing, and just Mistos was a bug in my brain, and there's something about like then that the halfling barbarian angle on it. So I think I'm going to retcon him in my own story to being a halfling barbarian, and yeah, he was a lot of fun to play. It's been so long since I've been a player, and even as a DM, I'm bad at remembering all my various mechanics. Especially I'm soft on my players, way too soft. And I often will not use some of the monsters like double attack features, or I know that the hobgoblins that Jason used in this past session were some of them have like a martial attack just does extra damage. So I'm always really bad at remembering those things. So Mistos actually never added his rage damage for that entire encounter, despite the fact that it was doing lots of damage. I was just rolling really well. But he would have done another about 10 points of damage just over the entire combat, just if I'd remembered to add some of those things. So sometimes your playing takes a hit for your DMing and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think, for us, one of the things that we try to lean towards is we're trying to create a good story and a good show using the mechanics of D&D. So we don't want to be too limited, don't want to get too dragged down in the rules, despite how Jason may have felt when he had all four really picking on him about some of his choices.
Well, the players aren't doing their job if they're not asking for every advantage possible, right?
That's right. That's right.
You can't ask for you can't get what you don't ask for.
Yeah. It's the truly anal players that also try to ask for every disadvantage so that everything is just right. Everything has to be just right.
Yeah, I didn't get enough of those requests, I found.
For disadvantage?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there is that. It is that interesting interplay. Does it feel different, Jason, DMing for DMs?
I think
better or worse, I guess, is the question, or neither.
Nah, in this case, neither. I think and maybe I'm just settling a little more into the style of the one shots. I think actually, if you'd asked me this question, like for the first Barovian game that I ran, I think I would have been far more nervous if it had been the same slate. Whereas I think in this case, I'm also comfortable not knowing, because I think I'm comfortable knowing that I've set up what I think is a good adventure, but that I'm comfortable with accepting that I might not be remembering a mechanic.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I try to be as good as I can, but I'm not opposed to being corrected during the game, because I think, like, especially if it's done quickly and I feel like it's not completely throwing off what the flow of the story in the game is, then I'm happy to be like, oh yeah, you're right, you should totally have that that effect or what have you.
Excellent. Now, for myself, yeah, I mostly DM. Perfect timing. We have Curt coming in. He's going to be talking about sound, so we'll put him on the spot immediately. Curt.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Hang on. Uh-oh. Screen difficulties.
So when he comes back, we'll tell him we didn't start without him, and we'll make him feel like the show was 100% about him. For myself, I normally DM, so being able to play, I have the same sense probably as the other two in terms of having a little more freedom. Often what I'll do when I am playing is I will take characters that I have accidentally created through my game and expand on them. I think similar to what you were saying, Davis. And this one was actually kind of 100% completely based on a music video I happened to be watching 2 weeks ago, Professor Elemental, Chap Hop, Fighting Trousers. This is a British, anyway, don't have to get into it. And then I just expanded on that to make him sort of more, and also it actually worked out very well because it is a very sort of 40s style. Eberron itself has a feel to me as being very sort of steampunk, film noir, kind of quasi dark fantasy. I always think of I think maybe iconic image of the Warforged robotic character in a trench coat. So that sort of adventuresome pulp fiction idea works really well with like a 1940s British actor.
Mhm.
So having Hammond work be sort of a failed detective, I thought worked well. Although he didn't get enough chances to hit things that he was hoping for. We're just having Curt come back in. So I'll start, Jason. How did you feel about it as the show went on?
I felt pretty good, actually. I think I liked what I felt like I kind of did this time was I really just created an environment and then allowed you like, and I knew where everything was and what what had caused them all to be where they were, but allowing you guys to just try things and keep trying things, I think felt I liked that process versus it being like a lot more of a clear through line. Like you're just supposed to go here and do this thing and get this here. Although that said, I think as the clock started to run and I was like, well, okay, they need to get in that security car at some point. I did kind of step up some suggestions from the NPC. So that was maybe in the future, maybe I would add more like inherent guidance about how you should like maybe like a hint at least on how to start the adventure versus just landing and not knowing what to do. I think the other thing is that I always have a hard time balancing monsters and I always underweight the monsters. So I feel like I should have, the opposition should have been stiffer is kind of a feeling that I had.
Yeah, I think Jen and I have talked about this as well, is see the difference between this and a regular game is that they can basically go whole hog 100%, blow all their skills and things because they know they're going to be done in an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to kind of almost overload, or at least have in reserve some other monsters because they'll do everything, right?
Yeah.
Like Hammond threw everything into his first attack just to bang, 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 hit things down. Now, of course, that was also due to I had good rolls. Davis said he had good rolls. I think everyone felt pretty good. We were lucky, and that could have gone completely poorly as well, and then it would have been a much more drawn out fight, which of course is impossible to completely script.
Yeah. One thing I have been thinking about, and maybe actually you guys are already doing this, maybe this is a good kind of DM conversation in general, in terms of like, and hopefully the audience will find this interesting too, is I've been considering the idea of taking the monsters and taking any monster I'm using and like goosing the damage a little, but lowering their health so that they would hit harder, but not last as long in the combat. And thereby maybe make combat have higher stakes, but not take longer.
I really recommend looking at Matt Colville's action-oriented monsters for this.
Oh yeah, okay.
And because there's a little bit of what you're talking about, how you want to bump AC, bump HP, so that it's like at the top of what those can be. I mean, whatever, I humber, whatever, you can be whatever you want. But and then the ability to do not exactly layer actions, but like villain actions at the end of each turn, so that more can happen. And not layer, more legendary. And so they're not like super powerful, but there's something that can happen at the end of the other player's turn, especially if it's sort of designed for if there's only one boss battle, but but I like doing it. And even as a baby DM, one of the things that I like doing was considering, I used to have a sticky that said, think about the environment on initiative 1 or whatever initiative you want, where you can think of, has anything changed in the environment? Has a bookshelf fallen over? Is the lightning rail cars decoupled or something? Like, you can always just make something happen. So I had like a pause in initiative where I thought about other things than my monsters.
Mhm.
Right. The Colville series is really good. He's talking about there, and he uses it in a couple of other of his talks, as he talks about bringing in some of the 4E stuff, and that idea of having a whole slew layers of activities. That and it, I think he talks about it in something, or someone has. It's just the basic math. The more hits, whoever side has the more hits wins. 9 times out of 10. And that's, you can do all the math and weigh the experience points and all that kind of stuff.
What was that, Jen?
Shh, what do you take down all the secrets? I know it feels like we're all DMs here, but
Gotta hold
Yeah.
some cards close to the chest, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe
All right,
there's
let's talk to Curt. Kurt's been, ironically, is on sound, but it's been so quiet.
Well, yeah. I don't know. What do you want to know? Last night was a bit tricky because I was having some technical difficulties with the software that we used for the show. So I was having a hard time registering the levels of volume in the Zoom feed. So I was constantly sort of checking the chat to see if our chat behind the scenes to see if people were finding it too loud or too quiet.
Right.
So that was a bit
Because
of a
there's sort of
challenge.
two kinds of sounds happening, right? Do you want to talk about those two different types?
Yeah, I mean, there's like ambiance that plays sort of underneath. It's sort of like the under narrative to what's going on. But then there's also like little sound effects that'll pop out every now and then, like the squeaks or something that I might be able to throw in to add a little flavor. So I can sort of ride the narrative a little bit, but then sometimes I really have to be paying attention to try and get the jump on something oftentimes to add that sort of flair that I want. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. Like it really is. It's improvising sound, and
Right.
even like the discussion that I have with the DM for the session beforehand, there's very little given. It's kind of just like, this is sort of the atmosphere. This is where we might be. This is the combat will happen at some point, and it might be that sometimes the monster will be shared with me. Sometimes it won't. So it's kind of up to me to build something, and sometimes you can kind of hit a home run, and sometimes it's a bit of a, you miss the mark. I felt like last night wasn't too bad. I would have liked to, having sort of witnessed it now, I would have loved to have been able to throw in a little bit of like classical kind of music for sort of some of the guests that were on board, because everybody was speaking in that high British accent, and I felt like, oh my God, we need to have some sort of like train car ambiance of like, but I just didn't have it prepared, so it was like, well, that's not going to happen. I think you had said there might be a little bit of like a treasure hunt. So in my mind, I was like, I could imagine all the players kind of like moving quickly through the crowd of the train trying to find something. So I prepped a lot of sort of like suspense kind of like car chase kind of type feel music to try and give that flair.
Nice.
I really want to give some roses to Curt because you actually built the sound of the lightning rail. That wasn't something that
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
That was new for me. I mean, that like I'm by no means am I a sound designer or anything like that. I'm in my real life prior to COVID, I'm a professional actor, so I have a little bit of experience with it. But for me, like the decision to do that was more for me just to learn a bit more about the software and what can be done with it, and little baby steps. But it's fun. It is super fun.
And I think that is actually sound design. I think that's the definition of sound design.
Yeah. I mean, prior to this, I would never have thought of even trying to do something like this. So,
see, you needed COVID so that you could spread your wings, Curt.
It's true. It's true. This was the impetus for me to branch out and do other things.
Oh my God.
Just like everybody else that's out of work and looking for things to do, and why they're tuning into our show.
That's right. That's why they're watching it at 2:00 in the afternoon on a
That's
Thursday.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is just to give you everyone an idea of the kinds of things that are happening behind the scenes, so you can see what we're thinking about, what we're regretting, what we're enjoying, just all those little tidbits. And also, of course, also again, like to thank Davis for coming in and joining us
Absolutely.
and being such a bright light overshining the rest of us.
Yeah, well done,
Oh,
sir.
not at all.
done.
It was my pleasure, though. Absolutely.
Thanks again, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks for some more Eberron adventures.
Yay!
Yay!